If you've ever thought, I just want to start a business so I can have some more freedom, this episode is for you because there's a really good chance you're aiming at the wrong target. And it's not your fault. This is one of the most common misunderstandings in early stage entrepreneurship. The truth is, wanting a business and wanting freedom are not the same thing. And if you mix those up, you could end up working more hours with more stress for less money. So let's talk about how to avoid that and how to figure out what you actually want before your first dollar. Hi, I'm Matt. I've spent over 25 years building companies as a serial entrepreneur and helping small business owners navigate challenges and avoid costly mistakes. On this channel, we talk about real-world entrepreneurship, especially if you're pre-revenue, early stage, or just trying to figure out what actually makes sense for your life. Let's get into it. People tell me all the time, I want to start a business. But when I ask a few follow-up questions, what they describe is usually more like they want flexibility or control over their schedule. They want more time with their family. They definitely don't want a boss. And they want the ability to make more money. And none of that is wrong. But here's the shift. That's not really describing a business. That's describing more of a lifestyle outcome. They're not chasing the business. They're chasing a feeling. And if you don't separate those two things early, you can make decisions that feel right in the moment, but create years of problems later. So let's ground this in reality, especially before your first dollar. Starting a business usually means uncertainty and inconsistent revenue, wearing every hat and figuring things out as you go. And in a lot of cases, you're working more hours than you would in a traditional job. Not less work, more. Not exactly the freedom they were originally expecting. In fact, for a while, it's actually the complete opposite. So here's the part people don't always expect. In the first 12 months, freedom usually goes down before it goes back up because you're building something from nothing. You don't have the systems and any leverage yet. You don't have any people yet. So if your primary goal right now is immediate freedom, a business might actually delay that. Not permanently, but in the short term, it often does. And this is where things start to break down. When people confuse wanting a business with wanting freedom, they tend to build the wrong type of business. They take on things they don't actually want long-term. They say yes to everything early on. They create something that depends entirely on them. And then a few months or a year in, they're completely overwhelmed. Not because they failed, but because the business that they built brick by brick doesn't match the life they actually wanted. And that's a really important distinction to make. When that happens, you didn't fail. You built something that wasn't in alignment. Your expectations just didn't match reality. Let me show you what this actually looks like in real life. I know an accountant who was feeling completely burned out. He didn't love his boss, the workload was overwhelming, and he had very little control over his time. So he left his 9 to 5 because he wanted more freedom and more control and more flexibility. And he started his own bookkeeping firm focused on small businesses. And at first, it felt really great. He was in control. He was getting his customers. But after a few months, kind of reality kicked in because the customers wanted evenings and they wanted weekends. And the phone was ringing all the time. And early on, it's really hard to say no. I mean, you're just building. So what happens? He ends up working more hours than before and at less predictable times with more pressure tied directly to the outcome because it all comes back to him. And suddenly he has less freedom than he had before. He feels more trapped by his business than he ever did at his job. So here's the key point. The business didn't fail. The model just didn't match the goal. He didn't want a business. He just wanted freedom. So, important question to ask is, how do you avoid this? Well, you just have to ask better questions early on, before your first dollar even. Things like, do you want to maximize income or have more control over my time? Am I willing to trade short-term freedom for long-term flexibility? Do I want to build something that depends on me or something that can eventually just run without me? A business is just a vehicle. It's not the goal. And the clearer you are about the outcome you actually want, the easier it becomes to choose the right type of business to build. Quick question for you. What are you actually after right now? More time, more money, more control? Drop it down in the comments. I read and answer every single one, and it helps me shape future videos around what you actually need. There's one more layer to this, and it's a little uncomfortable, but it's important. Some people say they want freedom, but what they really want is escape. Maybe it's from a job they don't like, or from a boss they don't respect, from burnout. And again, all of that is totally understandable. But building a business as an escape plan can be risky, because if you're running from something instead of building something, there's a good chance you'll just recreate the same problems in a different form. It's a different structure, but the same stress. So what do you do with all of this information? Well, let's get intentional. If you truly want freedom, you have to design for it. And that might mean starting slower, choosing a different model, keeping a little bit of a part-time gig longer, or building systems earlier than most people would. If you want to build something bigger, that's great too. But go into it understanding the trade-offs, more responsibility and more time investment up front. Neither path is right or wrong. It's the alignment that matters. So here's the takeaway. Starting your own business can absolutely create freedom, but only if you design it and build it that way. Otherwise, it can do the exact opposite. Wanting a business and wanting freedom are not the same thing. And the earlier you understand that, the better decisions you'll make before your first dollar and long after. If you're still pre-revenue or trying to figure out what kind of business actually fits your life, I've got a lot more videos breaking this down step by step. Make sure you're subscribed and check out the next one. All right. Take a deep breath. You got this. All right. What's next?